Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Pod.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network, where we'll go to the cinema, watch the Northman, review the film. Go to the cinema, watch the Northman, review the film, and go to the cinema, watch the Northman, and review the film. And joining me on my quest is Dallas King. Dallas, how are you?
I am ready. I'm the son of a murdered father, son of a kidnapped mother, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
So we're obviously going to be talking about Robert Eggers' brand new movie today, The Northman. So Prince is on the verge of becoming a man when his father is brutally murdered by his uncle, who kidnaps the boy's mother. 2 decades later, he is now a Viking who is on a mission to save his mother, kill his uncle, and avenge his father. So, featuring Willem Dafoe, Anya Taylor-Joy, Kate Dickie, and Ralph Ineson, who'd previously worked with director Robert Eggers on The Lighthouse and The Witch, and Nicole Kidman and Alexander Skarsgård joined the troupe for this one, Dallas. So, this is quite the change from what we've kind of expected from Robert Eggers before, in the respect of when you think of his films, you think of very low budget, single locations, small casts. This one, we're now looking at a potentially budget of, I've seen, between 60 and 90 million for this film, so quite the increase. So were you looking forward to this new Robert Eggers movie, as I know we were kind of big fans of his sort of previous work that he did with A24 on The Witch and The Lighthouse?
Oh, definitely. I mean, your description there, getting a lot of Lion King vibes, have to be honest. But I've seen the budget sort of talk. I would say it was probably budgeted at around 60 million, but then they were basically in rehearsals when COVID happened. So I guess all the delays and stuff like that probably bumped it up to 80 to 90 million. I mean, I've seen a lot of talk of potential reshoots, a lot of studio potential interference in trying to get something that was a bit more accessible. I mean, we can talk about whether it is or not, but I mean, I'm a huge fan of The Witch, huge fan of The Lighthouse, so a new Robert Eggers slice, always entertaining. I don't know, is it weird to say that out of all his films, this is potentially the most accessible? I would have said. I mean, plot-wise, it's a pretty sort of straightforward linear plot, wronged son seeks revenge on the person that killed his father and kidnapped his mother. I've seen the bus adverts, they're clearly Universal are wanting to make their money back on that 90 million, so they've been promoting it quite hard. And one of the big quotes was basically this generation's gladiator. I mean, from the plot, you can totally see that this sort of person who's been wronged, seeking revenge. But I guess does that mean that Robert Eggers is now becoming our generation's Ridley Scott? Interesting to see. But yes, I was really looking forward to it, and I have to say that I think my expectations were met, and I was very happy when I came out of the cinema. What about yourself?
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this one, but just trying to kind of not play it cool to an extent, but I'd sort of avoided the trailer or watching the trailer completely until what movie did I go see a couple weeks ago? Oh, Morbius, of all things. The trailer was attached to that, so I was finally kind of caught it there. And but I was always kind of a little bit worried. I think once I sort of started seeing it advertised on the side of buses, which I don't really associate with lots of the films that I potentially like, I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. They're certainly pushing the film, and but there was always just things in the back of my mind of like, with a 60 to 90 million dollar budget, you kind of think, he's not going to necessarily maybe have the freedom that he would have perhaps enjoyed before on The Lighthouse and The Witch in particular to kind of bring whatever he wanted to the film. And I dived into the I think it was like a New Yorker piece a few weeks ago, and it just sounded like, oh no, my worst fears for this film are coming true, of like, this is going to be a Robert Eggers movie that gets butchered in the edit. There's going to be studio notes here, there, and everywhere, and it's going to be perhaps like a box office disaster and so on. And it was quite a brutal read and so on, and you thought, oh my god, this is what's happening. Usually this stuff maybe comes out in the weeks after a film comes out. And you think of like Morbius recently, it's like everyone is having their say, and the amount of kind of fallout from that has been a bit bizarre. And then I thought, oh no, this is a bad sign. It's almost like everyone getting their excuses in nice and early. But I was pleasantly surprised. I watched that film and I came away, and while I think it's his most accessible film, and I could maybe argue it's my least favorite of the three. That's no insult whatsoever to the film at all. I came away thinking, oh, that is definitely a Robert Eggers movie, and I perhaps couldn't see on first watch, certainly anyway, where perhaps the studio interference might have come in.
Yeah, no, I mean it felt like a completely cohesive film. It didn't feel jarring in terms of tone or whatever. I'm wondering if this does sound maybe slightly odd, but did they potentially tone down some of the violence? There were a few scenes where, like, a couple of bits are done sort of in close up looking at his face, but then, it was rated a 15 for strong violence and stuff. And, you see arms getting hacked off. You see a guy with his guts spilling out and stuff. And I've just actually read a tweet a couple of minutes before coming on where someone was debating the fact that Last Night in Soho got an 18 rating, whereas The Northman got 15, and they just couldn't square their head around it. I think Last Night in Soho probably got an 18 because the violence was related to a sexual violence during the act of sex, and they always come down harder on that kind of thing. But I mean, would this have got an 18, say, 10, 15 years ago? I don't know. I mean, at times I thought it was kind of tame. I was almost looking for a bit more on the on the violent sort of action stuff like that. I mean, there's one particular scene which was pretty much like that was your sort of Ridley Scott sort of big action moment where the sort of Fenrir wolf berserkers attack this village, and it's all done pretty much in one shot. Masterful sort of action sequence, and sort of really takes you into it and shows Eggers basically sort of evolution as a filmmaker. I think he's really sort of becoming very, very comfortable with what he wants to do. And yeah, I mean, this is sort of Gladiator. There's elements I saw of like Aronofsky's sort of The Fountain in there as well, sort of really sort of drawing on a lot of different sort of filmmakers but it's still very much his style. Obviously, having sort of familiar faces in there popping up, always good to see that. But anyone who can get Bjork out of semi-retirement to film a couple of scenes, you know that he's got a vision that people were really keen to sign up to.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, we are recording this on a Monday, and the box office for the weekend has come in for it. So, opened in 15 kind of markets overseas, still to open in America, but it made 3.38 million over the Easter weekend, which is pretty good going for a 15 rated film with a lot of the competition that's out there. And the UK and Ireland made it the most across 510 screens. It made 1.7 million, and then sort of following up after that was Mexico with just shy of 1 million, and then 500,000 in Sweden as well. So kind of coming in at number 4 in the British box office, which is pretty good going when you think that there's a new Harry Potter film. Sonic is continuing to bring in audiences, and then you've got the Lost City as well for sort of that perhaps kind of younger teenage audience as well.
Yeah, I mean, considering it dropped basically towards the tail end of the Easter holidays, yeah, you are going to expect that the child-friendly films are going to do the top. But I would say that 1.7 million in the UK for a non-IP, non-sequel, 15 rated, violent Viking epic, I think it's a pretty decent result, to be fair. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the States next week, because it opens up, I guess, going head to head with the Nicolas Cage film. So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, I mean, you look normally, what is it? You look to basically double the budget with your marketing costs and to see what it needs to do to break even. Is it going to do 120 to 160 million worldwide? Doubtful, but I think it's certainly had rave reviews across the board in terms of critic ratings, particularly here in the UK. I mean, had visions of this being, it was going to get 99, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then get the fabled F cinema score. I think it will do better than that. I think it is, like you say, it's his most accessible film, so I think it will probably I think it will find an audience, but you're probably looking at probably like a B or a C. From there'll be some people who aren't really keen on it, but I certainly dug it.
Yeah, I was the same. I was really surprised how busy I was. Like you, I went to see like a 10 a.m. sort of. I think it was like 10:30 screening, and when I kind of got in, just sort of about sort of 10:30, I had like a cup of tea, a little croissant and so on, and it felt nice to be sort of have a Friday off to just enjoy the brand new cinema kind of films out sort of first thing in the morning. And there was like when I got in, there was like seven men all on their own. It was like, yeah, this is the type of crowd that I maybe expected for a Robert Eggers movie on a Friday morning. And then it became surprisingly quite busy for sort of that time of the morning. And I think I think everyone's shouting out for films like this, truth be told, where it's films that are aimed at an adult audience. They're really well made, and these are the type of films that where we need these in the cinema chain and so on. And I must admit, I think it was perhaps a little bit of a bold gamble, if I say that right, to put it into cinemas on an Easter weekend with all the competition there is, because you can already see where it perhaps would end up fourth without sort of much of an issue. But it's great that we've got that option there, and I just hope it's that people perhaps don't take the wrong message away from this if the film perhaps just underperforms box office wise.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's potential that it could have maybe even opened third, perhaps, if because Lost City did open on a Wednesday. So, but yeah, no, I went 10 a.m. because on Friday because I unexpectedly had Good Friday off. So I went in, and yeah, I was surprised actually how busy it was. I think there was about sort of 20, 25, and if anyone keeps track of me, sort of in the cinema situation in Aberdeen, Northman played at both Cineworlds, not just it was at Union Square and the Beach. Now, normally, if something is pretty much written off to begin with, it will play at the Beach on sort of like one showing a day. This got 4 shows a day at both cinemas, so good to see. I guess the real test will be, I guess, once we get the cinema times for next week, and if it's able to maintain that sort of momentum. But I think, yeah, this is not only a test for how well Robert Eggers is going to be accepted into the mainstream, but it is that test of the film that we have been crying out for, and many people have been crying out for, which is that mid-range budget film, which is for adults, which is not a superhero movie or a kids movie or something. And yeah, I think a lot of people will be looking to see how something like this does. Obviously, I think if it had been able to have been done for like 30, 40 million, then I think, yeah, it would have been, yeah, I think they would have taken that as a success. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. And, is Eggers then now, if he's seen as a success, which franchise do you think he's going to get tapped up to try and be part of next?
Yeah, you watch this kind of film, you think it's going to be. I don't think he's doing it, but it would be probably viewed as a calling card by your Marvels and DCs of like, this guy's got vision, let's get him in, and a sort of potentially Matt Reeves kind of mold. And
I would take him over Taika Waititi to do a Thor movie though at this stage.
Yes, oh god, yeah, that's an amazing thought. I never put that two and two together there. That would be a great shout. But we've spoken about Eggers, but what did you make of sort of Alexander Skarsgård in sort of this lead role? That he's an actor that seemed to struggle to find a kind of breakout hit at the box office. He seems to kind of work well as sort of like a supporting actor in roles, but when you think of things like Passing, for example, kind of melancholia. But then you kind of look at a lot of his kind of leading roles. That could be something like Mute, for example, Godzilla versus Kong, the Tarzan movie that I always forget about. He seemed to be kind of doing a bit better on sort of the small screen with things like sort of Pretty Little Lies and Succession than films. So do you think this is something that's going to maybe kind of change the narrative surrounding him?
I think so, actually. Yeah, I think I was really impressed with him. He's able to do a lot with very little, so to speak. It is a sort of hulking, brooding, intense performance. He's very quiet at times, but it's all there in his sort of body language and stuff. And he was clearly working out for the role, and there was multiple opportunities for him to show off how hard he'd been working out for the role. But I was very impressed with him, and actually the entire cast. Actually, I thought everyone was great. It's always nice to see Ethan Hawke pop up on the big screen. And I'd say between this and Knives Out 2, it looks like 2022 is the year that Hawke turns up to be killed in a film and kickstart the plot. I'm not, this is just me going off of the fact that he turned up on the Knives Out shoot for about a couple of days and then went back to filming Moon Knight. So I'm only assuming that he's the person that gets killed to begin with. No spoilers here, but that's what I think. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was really really good in that performance. It's just that he's just such a great physical performer in this, and you just feel that anger, that hurt, that frustration, and yeah, that relationship with his mother takes quite the twist. And I kind of was when I was sort of watching the film, and I should have sort of seen it coming. Sort of Nicole Kidman's kind of role, you just see, it seems kind of pretty standard. Sort of the queen, maybe she's in peril. She's this woman that needs help. Quite far from it, and I think the scene in the tent, for those that have seen it, is certainly made for one of my kind of favorite moments of the year so far.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, to begin with, and this is not just a slight against Nicole Kidman. I think the opening scene where accents are delivered, and you're like, okay. I think even Hawk is a bit like it's like, full credit to them for going for the sort of Scandi Norse accents rather than just doing like a stiff upper lip British people doing that kind of thing. But I wasn't entirely sold on Kidman to begin with. But then that scene where she gets like a sort of 5 to 8 minute sort of monologue on what's happened in the time between Amleth sort of rowing off as a kid and coming back to avenge her and save her. I thought she was just absolutely sensational, and it feels terrible to be one of those people, but given that it is only April, but I would chuck her name in the hat for best supporting actress. I think that scene alone would be enough to get her a nomination. I haven't seen anything else that's going to be nominated this year, but I would love to see a film like this, get some sort of recognition. And I think out of the entire cast, I think she's got a chance because that she is just sincere. She just goes on such a turn in that scene, starting off all sweet and innocent and then turning it into something else. I don't want to spoil it completely if everyone hasn't seen it yet, but yeah, it's just a tour de force performance, and she's just absolutely, and it goes weird and like very, very dodgy towards the end of that scene, but I thought she was sensational in it.
We spoke about that there's a few returning actors from The Witch and The Lighthouse. Willem Dafoe has a small role, much like Kate Dickie and Ralph Ineson, but Anya Taylor-Joy continues to pick brilliant films and appearances. What did you make of her as sort of in this sort of leading role as well?
I mean, she's fantastic in any role she does. I mean, I am slightly disappointed that she missed out on The Lighthouse because I was reading the article this week where she was saying that she would want to play the mermaid, and Eggers was like, "Trust me, you don't want to play the mermaid." But she said, I mean, I could have seen her as she said she wanted to play a seagull. I mean, if they decided to voice the seagull in The Lighthouse and she was the voice of the seagull, I think that could have been a nice extra thing. But I thought she was great. I was expecting something slightly different from her role. I think from the trailer, when she says she can sort of twist the minds of men, I was expecting her to be more towards the supernatural as opposed to just sort of like devious. But I thought she was great and really sort of anchored the sort of emotional turn of turning Amleth towards and giving him that real sort of dilemma towards the end about which path he's going to choose. Is it going to be protecting his love, or is he going to be consumed ultimately by the hatred towards this man? And I have to say that the film does a pretty good job of blurring the lines, I think, between who is actually in the right and wrong here. I think Kidman's speech does a lot to juxtapose who is actually, the person who's evil in this. Because, I mean, every sort of person seems to be not entirely innocent in this. He's part of this tribe that goes around, raping and pillaging all these different small towns and stuff like that. So I mean, no one is a saint in this film, but yeah, it does a nice job of muddying the waters, I thought.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I think makes this film so effective is that yeah, you can think on paper, yeah, there is a good and a bad in here, but isn't it just the same cycle repeating itself over and over again? And I think that's something we sort of seen in The Witch and The Lighthouse too, is these kind of repetitive cycles that people get themselves trapped in, and the toxic behavior that kind of spreads from it. And I mean, you can, I suppose, one of the comparisons I could almost make with the Northman was, you can imagine a sort of sequel all the way down the line, similar to, I know they've spoken for years about sort of making a Kill Bill 3, where it's all about sort of kind of the Black Mamba's daughter getting her revenge. Sort of again, that cycle just continues to rebound, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that would be, I'd be also, or potentially going down the Gladiator 2 route. Didn't Nick Cave write a script at one point where Maximus was going to come back from heaven or something to avenge something? Or something. There would have been like a ghostly Russell Crowe or something. Who knows? I mean, that might be a potential route as well. Although I don't want to give spoilers to the ending. But I mean, if anyone's ever read any Shakespeare, Hamlet is definitely probably aligned more towards the tragedy side than the comedy side. Although I did have to laugh watching it, and I mean, admittedly, the myth of Amleth did come before Hamlet, so basically Shakespeare stole that. But I just imagined the whiteboard meeting where Reggers was pitching it, and I think the famous one was was it James Cameron who wrote Alien on a whiteboard and then just wrote aliens, added an S, but then turned the S into a dollar sign. And then I was like, that was it. And basically he just wrote Hamlet, scored out the H, put it at the end, and then went, but Vikings. So, I mean, but yeah, I think it was a great thing. And, I guess, but I mean, are we now in that sort of mindset that any sort of mildly successful IP has to be considered for a sequel? I mean, I think it's safe to say this is a sort of one and done, but I mean, I think I would love to see Eggers continue down the route of original stories rather than being tapped up to do any sort of sequel to this, personally.
Could you ever see Eggers doing a kind of modern day movie? Like, obviously, he has been very much deep rooted in the past. Could you see him doing a kind of coming to the future?
It's tough to say, actually, because I actually don't know what that would look like. Yeah, I've just sort of New England witches, and then sort of late 18th century lighthouses, Norse gods. Yeah, it's difficult to know what a modern day Eggers would look like, and I mean, I'd be fascinated to see it, but yeah, I'm struggling to actually think of what type of story he would do. Yeah, no, you've got me thinking now.
And also, do you see sort of Eggers, like, we've both read that New Yorker piece and, his challenges with the studio system. Do you see him as maybe someone that sort of maybe pulls back a little bit from the studio system, maybe still works within it on sort of smaller budgets? I say smaller, maybe it's a 40 million or a 30 million, or do you see him going back to sort of that world of A24, kind of, Neon, etc.? Do you think that's maybe where we're going to kind of see him pop up next? Do you think he's been kind of burned, I guess?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I think a lot could depend on on the money, really, and how Universal see if it was a success or if they get a good return on it. I know that he did say that he would want full creative control over the next one, and if that means dropping down a budget or working with someone, then I think he will be more comfortable doing that. I think you've got to try these things, and as an experience, he'll now know whether or not he's comfortable enough. I think I would love to see him return to A24 to do another film. I think he will drop down to something smaller initially, but I think it will ultimately come down to the scale and scope of the story that he's looking to tell, and what budget he needs to do that. But I mean, we've just seen that there's the success of Everything Everywhere All at Once is doing gangbusters at the moment. I think to the point where it's surprising the studios and audiences. I think it's got the highest screen average per year. It's done about 18 million, and people are like, "Oh, that's not much compared to a Marvel one." It's like, well, you can't compare it to a Marvel one. It was shot for much less. It's got a smaller rollout. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Northman does in America, given it probably will get like a full-scale rollout of probably a couple of thousand screens initially. Where would it have benefited more from the sort of word-of-mouth approach? I guess we'll have to see. But yeah, I think he will drop down initially until he comes up with a story that needs the budget to tell it, and he'll need to figure out how much he's willing to bend in order to get that story told, I think.
Yeah, well, whatever he does next, we'll either review on this podcast or the A24 project. So yeah, I can't wait to see whatever he does next. And one suspects I'm going to come away learning something about historical time, and maybe in the same process, I'm going to be exposed to bizarre animals, shit, blood, cum, who knows what else. But I can guarantee whatever budget Eggers does, it's going to provoke me in that way, I think.
Absolutely, and I just have to say that I was very pleased that we got justice for the Viper in this movie. For any Game of Thrones fans out there, the Viper on the Mountain, I saw that the Mountain made an appearance in a game of, I guess, Viking Quidditch or something like that, and basically gets his head stoved in. So justice for Pedro Pascal. However, I just don't know how you can stove someone's head in without stoving your own head in. That's the only bit that really didn't make any sense to me. You could hear like the cracking of a skull, yet Alexander Skarsgård walks away with not even a bruise on his forehead. Just didn't make any sense. But I mean, I noticed that one of the things it was saying that it took place in ancient Scotland, but I'm trying to figure out where. I was reading that it was apparently former Ukraine, Scotland and Iceland. So the uncle's place was Iceland. So I'm guessing was it the initial sort of territory? Because they talk about he knows someone in Orkney. So I'm assuming that maybe Ethan Hawke's kingdom was maybe on one of the Scottish islands, perhaps. Because really, that's something that should be made of a much bigger deal in order to get the Scottish audiences in, I think. Skara Bray and all that. That's what we did at school, So.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was a bit surprised it wasn't kind of played up a little bit more and so on. But yeah, it's always good to get representation. So we've got some interesting historical kind of characters in history here in Scotland. So perhaps that'll be the next step. And hey, we've got lighthouses here as well. So yeah, bring on Robert Eggers to Scotland.
We had some witches as well. I'm pretty sure at the Castlegate they hung a couple of witches. So yeah, Eggers needs to definitely come to Scotland, because I'm pretty sure they were filming in Ireland. So, as I said before, we managed to film an entire Batgirl movie in Scotland, and they're always popping over for like a scene or two here and there. But yeah, bring the Viking and the historical epics back to Scotland.
Well, thank you very much to everyone for listening. And Robert Eggers, if you're listening, come to Scotland. Hey, you've been on our podcast. It feels like the next thing to do is come over here, film in Scotland, and we'll have a sit-down interview with you as well.
We need a feature-length Eggers A24 project.
There we go. We're all sorted. Thanks to everyone for listening. Take care. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd